actually are talking. But yeah, we're on air. So welcome everybody to episode 2 of Recruiting Brainfood, the title of which is Google for Jobs. Is it a Game of Thrones move for job boards? And I'm your host today. I'm Hung Lee from Workshop.io, and I'm delighted to be joined by 2 of the 4 guests I hoped to actually get on board, but we're having some technical difficulties. Hopefully Matt and Renee will join us in due course, but I just want to welcome my good friend Jeffrey. I always get you confused from Jeffrey Dickey Chasins or Jeffrey Chasey Dickens, but he's the job board doctor, one of the leading consultants on the planet when it comes to recruitment advertising. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks. And Gareth Jenkins, who is one of the key product and technical people at Format, a kind of career site builder for some of the leading brands in the UK, I believe. So I think, again, 2 people with a very good angle on what Google for Jobs really means. So I'm going to just start with you, Jeff, because you published a very emphatic blog, didn't you, about a day or so ago? And it was, look, is it as big a deal as you think? And you said, yes, it is. Can you give us an idea, just your high level, what is Google for Jobs and why should we care?
Yeah, so this is basically coming out of my experience last week at the JobGate conference in New Orleans. And our sort of big speaker there was Google and Career Builder. And I had a chance to sit down with Tarquin Clark, who is the head of the Google Jobs Cloud project, and talk with him quite a bit. And then they did their presentation, had a lot of questions going on. So basically, this whole project breaks out into 2 areas. So one is what I call the jobs markup piece. So Google has done a bunch of analysis and said, basically, we think this is the right schema for jobs. We want everyone to use this. If you use it and you send us the information, you're going to get pushed up into what people are seeing now when they look for jobs on Google, which is sort of a highlighted area showing the jobs. So basically makes you more discoverable to the audience. A lot of job boards are already doing this. A lot of platforms are doing this, and a lot of employers are in beta tests doing this. So there's a lot of jobs flowing into the Google's search engine right now that are already marked up in this particular way. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it, which I think is maybe a little bit more controversial and also more interesting, is the Cloud Jobs API. So Google basically has been doing a bunch of analysis for the last 3 or 4 years of what was happening at their career site. Because they're a big brand, they get a lot of traffic, a lot of people looking for jobs, and they started studying mismatches. And so what happened is that, of course, evolved into them looking at, well, we're all about search. We shouldn't be having these types of mismatches. We don't understand the career side of things, doing a bunch of research, and what we see now is this Cloud Jobs API, which is their answer to that. So in a nutshell, the way it works is if you're participating, either as an employer or a job board or a platform provider, basically you're going to have your jobs housed on one of the Google servers, the Google Cloud, and it's sort of locked down, a little private area. And when someone on your site does a query, it gets shipped up to your section on the server. They reformat the query, they run it against your jobs, and they shoot the results back to the job seeker. They claim, and I haven't seen hard numbers on this, no one was willing to throw out any really hard numbers, but they claim there's a much higher match rate and conversion rate. I will say I talked to the head of Snagajob, and I can't really reveal the numbers, but the increase in matches, conversions, and they track all the way to hires, was pretty substantial. Snagajob actually controls the ATS piece for a lot of their clients, so they can do what a lot of job boards can't, which is, track it from hitting the site down to the interview and hire stage. So that's that's it in a nutshell. There's a lot of catches along the way. Certainly, a lot of people were saying this looks like Indeed all over again, but that's the basic landscape right there.
Interesting. I mean, there's lots of things to digest there, and you ended with the term, is it Indeed all over again? And I think kind of it is, isn't it? This is literally Indeed getting Indeeded, so to speak. And the only company that could possibly do it are doing it. So very interesting how this, I'm going to jump back and touch on some of those points you raised, especially how you've segmented it, Jeff. But Gareth, I wondered whether you could just chime in to give your view from a company, the sorts of, builds employer brands for businesses and so on. Well, I think Rene's joining us, which is great. What's your take on Google for Jobs? How significant is this really?
Firstly, hugely significant. I mean, totally agree with Jeff on this one. In terms of sort of the traffic that we get at the moment, I mean, the vast majority of traffic will be either Indeed and from aggregators or Google. And if you really combine that sort of Google and potentially, to be discussed no doubt, move some of that traffic from Indeed across to Google, there's a huge shift there. The other big thing for this is that a lot of effort, so that anyone involved in recruitment marketing, and certainly platform builds sort of across the globe, is focused on SEO around recruitment terms, but generally fitting like how can you shoehorn really sort of recruitment processes, but into a general SEO, a general page ranking. That shifts fundamentally, with this now, with having this huge, great top of the screen dominated by a job search engine. Sort of embedded really within the Google search results, to being very much now about individual jobs and individual job rankings. In terms of, just going back to one point that Jeff made about splitting up into sort of those two segments. I mean, for me, I think there is a third in there that is kind of the unknown at the moment, which is Google Hire as well. So, potentially their own ATS, potentially a competitor to LinkedIn, some people have said. I mean, I've heard lots of discussion around it, but really nothing definitive put out there yet really on that side.
Do you know where, because Google's such a big monster, is Google Hire, the team that build that, is that sort of separate from the team that is building Google for Jobs, or does anyone know?
That's my understanding. Yeah,
it's totally separate at the moment. Yeah,
I think I've seen a lot of crossover so far in the sort of people I've followed a little bit, let's say, on sort of Twitter and LinkedIn a little bit around the product owners, product managers at Google. And there's crossover between certainly the Google for Jobs API and the Google search, and certainly the logic, the search matching functionality, and the sort of the understanding of search terms that underpins the API definitely seems to be the same thing that they're implementing, they're using on the search Google for Jobs search engine. But in terms of Google Hire, I've not seen yet any real crossover there. And in terms of what I've read about the team behind it, it was actually a company that builds a sort of platform for enterprise solution. Right. Behind, if you like, but it certainly seems to sort of sit to one side, I think, in that respect. But I think the long-term thing there of Google seems to have made big strides over the past few years of trying to deliver solutions for SME level businesses. And you can actually go and get yourself a Google hosted website. It's a nice, easy sort of entry for that kind of people. And obviously Google Local, things like that. They've changed that to Google My Business. Big efforts around that. And I see this sort of really tacking into that, but actually as well, now you can actually do whole hiring through it. Really easy approach for that sort of SME business level. So I think we will see at some point that whole Google Hire coming nicely into the mix, that you can upload it, you've got your own ATS that goes straight into Google for Jobs, and then the whole end-to-end process is sort of taken care of.
Yes, so this is the Googleopoly, isn't it? I mean, the tech guys ought to know well about what all this is, but for us recruitment folks, we've always been Google in the background. Now Google's in the foreground, and we've got to pay attention. So I'm delighted to be chatting with you brain boxes here and telling you all about it. And I'm very pleased that Rene Bollier has joined us. Rene, how are you doing, sir? Sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you hear us okay? Yeah,
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Just a little bit of a lag, but that's cool. The initial question was okay. Google for Jobs. This seems like a big deal. Is it a big deal? Tell us what it is from your perspective, Rene.
Okay, so of course it's a big deal. because if you just think in a very simple way about it, a very large percentage of the world population, when they start orienting, when they start searching, when they have any do something, they start in Google at the moment. Obviously, Google, both in terms of reach and in terms of how well they are at
I think we're struggling to hear
results,
Rene, I'm afraid.
Is a potential game changer.
Oh, hey, Rene, I think that we might have to stage an intervention here. You've got, yeah, it's a very bad line, I'm afraid. We can see the video, but I think you're frozen again. Do you want to try and log back in and see whether you can rejoin? But let me kick you out, and then I'll invite you back, and maybe that will help. Okay, goodbye, Rene. Great.
And Hung, I want to jump in here real quick, if you don't mind. Someone had posted a comment saying, you know, surprised to hear they're saying the quality of candidate is better. You know, that can't be linked to the advertising channel, but the job ad itself. What we saw, and Career Builder was pretty transparent about what was going on with them when they started working with Google. I don't know, close to a year ago on their problem. What they were running into was some real sort of straight ahead mismatch stuff with the search technology that they had versus what Google was doing. And so sort of the classic example is, you'd say server jobs, server jobs London. And, you know, it could return, you know, jobs at a server farm, or it could return waiter jobs. And the search engines, quite honestly, on 95% of the job board platforms I'm aware of, don't really handle that very well. And that's a fairly straightforward question, and it drives job seekers crazy. So the thing that Google has, because it's a search platform that sort of sits, you know, has so much more data than any individual job board would have, is they can sit there and say, well, you know, not a lot of server farms in London. This person has done these 17 things prior to this search, et cetera, et cetera. They're actually looking for a waiter job in London. And also based on some of their other things, we think we know exactly, you know, we know their location, we know where they want to look for jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's actually how Career Builder saw their satisfaction on the job seeker side and also on the employer side go up a lot. Because basically, I'm getting 100 candidates, but 90 of those are actually looking at a job that they actually want to look at, or 95, whereas before it was maybe 30 or 40. So yeah, that's, you know, and they're saying basically it's still pretty early days. Like this is a good improvement, but the Snag-a-Job guys sort of jumped in and said, yeah, but we keep seeing, because it's machine learning on the job search side, and all the machine learning is happening just on your jobs in your little segment on the server and your audience, it keeps getting better and better and better.
So what does this look like for? I mean, this is all very good. This has all happened. But I'm a recruiter. I post jobs. How does this affect me? I mean, what's the thing I've got to do to take advantage of this?
Well, I think if you're a recruiter,
maybe nothing, I guess.
Well, I mean, my 2 cents. If you're a recruiter, basically, you're first of all, you're going to want to work with suppliers that are using the search technology, because they're just going to get better results. And this is an interesting thing. Joel Cheeseman has an article out on ERE today that's really interesting, talking about how Indeed has basically said we're not going to use it. You know, screw Google. Really? Well, if I'm a recruiter and I'm looking at, let's say Snag-a-Job, and I'm looking at Indeed, I'm probably going to get better results off of Snag-a-Job. Or if I have my own site, I'm probably going to get better results if I'm using the Google system. So that's probably step one.
Step back a sec, Jeff. You're saying that in terms of, I have my own site, so presumably I'm an employer, and I have a choice now to say, right, do I go to the Googleopoly and get better search results from Google, or do I, traditionally I would have just chucked my job into Indeed, I guess, or have that aggregated by Indeed, right? You're now saying that what Google is saying is that the results are going to be significantly better if you go by Google, I guess.
Right. They're going to say you're going to get higher conversion rates, and more than the higher conversion rates, you're actually going to be making more hires because you've got a higher quality of match. Now, this is what everyone says. And I think one of the things that made me sort of move off my usual pessimistic skeptics seat, which is sort of the way I typically look at all this stuff, because I've seen so many iterations of this go on, is that I talked to, I don't know, half dozen beta testers that were doing A/B tests. These are job boards, and they're like, it works. We're getting much better results than we were. Now the question about this, on the negative side is they said, so how much are you going to charge for this? And they're saying, well, there's a nominal fee, maybe a penny a search. If you're a Stack Overflow and you're running 3 million searches a month or 5 million searches a month, it adds up, right? Yeah.
Wow. So and then micropayment on an execution, basically.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Bulk buy kind of thing as well. But yeah, I mean, it's I've heard one thing about 1 cent per search. Kind of talked about at the moment.
What does that mean? This is a machine search, or is this some human being search? Tell the audience what that
means.
Candidate search.
Yeah, candidate search basically. And yes, there will be bulk, and the bigger and bigger and bigger you get, the LinkedIn's of the world will be getting substantial discounts, I'm sure, for example, in it.
All right, so I'm still not clear on this, because sorry to be ignorant. But when you say candidate search, who is getting billed for candidate search? What is candidate search?
Whoever's using the search platform. So if it's a job board, or if it's an employer, or a recruiting site, or you're the recruiter and you're using their search technology, whoever is actually using search technology, when a search hits and goes to the Google Cloud server and they return the results, that's a penny or whatever the charge is.
Right, and I can set a limit, I guess, similar to sort of how Google Ads works, basically, yeah?
Well,
no one asked that question.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't set a limit, nothing and get no results back. So that's the kind of challenge there, really. It's literally per search. So every time that results come back, that you as the middle ground, the provider of the platform, gets charged for that. So if you're a job board, you get and you're using this, you get charged per search. And as you say, that can really accelerate up quite quickly. You get twice the number of visitors, twice the number of searches going on. You pay twice the number of money to Google.
Wow, you know what, guys? I'm very naive, because when I first saw, well, it's not very obvious, isn't it? But I first thought when they launched Google for Jobs, I'm ashamed to say this. I thought.
Not Google for Jobs. This is the API specifically embedded into where people live.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Not only is my naivete is now being compounded by my ignorance. Good Lord. No. But very seriously, I thought this was an honest move for social good. I thought, you know what? For some reason, Google has obviously recognized people not getting jobs generates a lot of crap culturally, politically, etc. They're going to try and fix the problem. They're going to try and make sure that we sort this discovery matching thing for people. But in fact, this is going to be a massive moneymaker.
The heart for this, I see a huge great revenue opportunity here. I really do. I think it's a smart move, and especially with big coordinated moves with Microsoft and LinkedIn doing their sort of tie-up. I think it's a smart move, very smart move for them. And especially if they do, I think they're going to do is use the Google Hire as a way of reaching out en masse to the huge, great mass of SMEs and really small local businesses as well.
I'm confused enough already without introducing Google Hire for the time being, Gareth. So leave that to one side. Tell me, we've got some guy, Guillaume, thank you very much. He said, look, does anyone need to adjust their sitemap in order for Google to crawl this new thing? And the answer is yes, isn't it? Everyone needs to basically get on board. So this is like a global, worldwide cataclysm, not a cataclysm, ready your back, and the Lord. But this is like essentially this is I'm trying to find like a geological metaphor here, but it's literally something that is going to affect every website that might host a job. If you care about being discovered by search, which, thank the Lord, Workshape is anti-search, so we don't really care about this. But the vast majority of products out there probably do care. In which case, they're going to have to step it up. Okay, so let's have a look at who's the winner, who's the loser on all of this. Who is the Rene? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, I think it's better. Hopefully you caught some of that as a listener. I'm going to jump straight to you with your view. Who is the big loser from this move by Google into the job space?
Job boards.
Job boards. Tell me about.
Because I think there was an article that you actually already also saw, Jeff, today from Joel, that he was writing that Google is saying the exact same stuff Indeed was saying 10 years ago, right? We are going to help the ecosystem. We are going to help the big players. That's not true. Already, Google is accepting jobs from large employers. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but on YouTube you can find it. There's this whole Google for Jobs whatever talk, and they have the guys from Johnson & Johnson recruiting there, and with Jibe they have partnered up or integrated, whatever you want to call it, and large employers can already load their jobs into that and use the search as well. I am 100% sure that Google will immediately show jobs from employers. You can click right to these jobs. It makes no sense to keep the middleman in there for them.
Yeah.
So I have to jump in here. I think you're partly right, and a lot of it sort of hinges on how you define a job board. If you're talking about large general job boards, sort of traditional monster career builder, job site, that sort of thing, I think you're right. They're probably in a shaky place right now. I actually think the niche boards are gonna do just fine, because they're still essentially, particularly the content-driven niche sites like Stack Overflow, are going to do fine because they're basically concentrating an audience, and regardless of what's going on at the search engine level, that audience is going to that site for a lot of different reasons. But I think there's one key thing, and I wrote this in my blog, well, maybe I didn't, that's actually really different from Indeed and Google. Google, everyone in the industry has sat on the back of Google since the inception. I mean, since I came in '97, that's how everyone was discovered. Indeed was not the same. Indeed basically came in, gamed the search engine, stole jobs from job boards, sold them back to traffic, and then eventually dumped the job boards and became a job board. It's in Google's interest to actually maintain the job board ecosystem, because they're going to be able to extract millions and millions and millions of dollars from recruiters, recruitment sites, everything in that ecosystem. It's something, I mean, Google did it for a while, and Indeed did that for a while and moved on, but they weren't the platform. No one lived on the Indeed platform. A lot of job boards were hooked on that Indeed traffic. I mean, I always called it the crack cocaine of the job board world. But beyond that, I think there's a real difference there, and I don't see Google trying to push all the job boards out of the market. Maybe I'm being naive.
I think primary focus really would be on the end user experience, in this case the candidate. I think they're smart enough that they know that as long as they focus on that, then the employers will come to them ultimately, whatever revenue business they want. They don't want to make such a bad experience ultimately for their end candidate users that they push people away and they stop spending. So I think that their focus will be ultimately in terms of, this big question about ranking. Ultimately, it's like which jobs will come appear, because as we well know through multi-posters and all the rest, jobs appear in lots of places at once. And obviously Indeed has spent huge amounts of effort in terms of sort of their algorithms for deduping and ranking. Generally speaking, as far as I've sort of seen, Indeed will always put if they can, they'll put the direct employee in a career site sort of one towards the top. But I don't know if it would be quite sort of clean cut with Google, because I think if there is a on their own career site, but actually it's a terrible experience, it's like a really terrible site, and they're seeing lots of bounce rates, for example, when people are clicking through to that on a career site, but they're seeing the same job on a job board, which they know gets really good engagement, really low bounce rate. Well, I think that's going to be one of the factors in their sort of algorithm. So I don't think it's black and white as it maybe sort of has been talked about as being like one is always going to rank above the other.
Are we actually going to be relying on Google to take care of candidate experience? All respect to Google, but their UX has generally been quite difficult on most of the products they've made. I mean, but I joke a little bit. But I take your point, but can't they force the employers to do better? Because they can simply say to them, send them a quick message to say, listen, this will not be ranked, because it's almost like App Store like. It will not be ranked because it doesn't fulfill A, B, C, D. Get your tech guy to sort this out, and then it will be ranked. And then they've got such power to sort of mandate these changes that we will probably see a dramatic improvement across the board about how companies actually present their jobs, won't we? On sites, I should imagine.
Yeah, I think that it will have sort of that ecosystem effect. But I mean, Stephen O'Donnell just posted something saying, sort of the crux is whether Google makes more money from what I'd call a fractured ecosystem model, or if they try to go direct. And I'd say, based on everything I've seen Google do in the past, and based on what I heard from them, I think they do better by supporting the ecosystem, because that can grow and grow and grow.
I don't.
And
so,
as you.
So Jeff,
Oh, I'm hearing someone talk.
Yeah.
No, it's Renee.
Right.
Yeah. So in the short term, I agree with Jeff, because I think at the moment, of course, you need to follow the money to really understand the market, right? So at the moment, most of the money is being spent by people and given to salespeople. And these salespeople, they work for aggregators, for generic job boards, and for niche job boards, and for LinkedIn, which basically is also some kind of job board. But if you look at other markets, you can see that most of the money is not spent by giving it to a salesperson or making deals with individual publishers anymore. It's being spent in a very different way. You basically give it to a system that then distributes the money to those sites or platforms that perform really well. So I think in the short term, it's going to be very hard for Google to make a ton of money in the recruiting space by engaging with the end user, in, so to say, the employer or in the staffing agency. But I think in the future, that's definitely going to change.
That's interesting. Okay, tell me about, there's a couple of things I've noted in my head about this. Thanks a lot for your contributions so far, guys. But how are Google going to deal with duplicate jobs? Because I would imagine that would be something that is super annoying for a candidate. I'm a candidate. I'm looking for your server job there, Jeff, and suddenly I find 5 or 6 different representations of the same job. One is from Indeed, one is direct employer, another one is from some other agent or whatever. How has Google a plan for that? I mean, what's the skinny on this?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that. At the conference, the 2 primary questions were, how is this going to affect my individual job board? What is it going to cost? And how do you handle duplicate jobs? And quite honestly, they gave a very fuzzy answer about the duplicate jobs. I think it's something that they're still working their way through. I mean, if you're an individual job board and you're using Google search, there are ways that you can basically, and you're getting multiple feeds, there are ways that you can sort of say, this is the most important job, and put triggers on it, and Google, when it does a search, it'll pull that job back, as opposed to, if you're getting an aggregator feed or something. But when you're on the Google search engine itself, and there's duplicate content served up, I did not hear a clear answer from them on that, so I don't really know.
Go on,
I think if you compare it to...
I think it's going to be a very interesting picture. I mean, there's a lot of discussion around this, and certainly the general thought that I've seen around the place is that direct employer jobs ads are going to come top in time, and that next is probably going to be the niche or the valuable job boards, probably sort of somewhere down below that, and aggregators very much sort of at the bottom down there, and agencies, well, there's a big question really over agencies. Do they count in the niche ones within that niche job board mix, probably? And another interesting mix is there, though, that I've sort of seen through some of the testing I've been doing around the ranking of Google jobs. So far, I've seen a couple. I mean, some of the early integration partners, let's say, include iSIMS, for example. And this talks about some of the ATS. And I've seen at least one so far, Taleo job, actually sort of ranked directly in Taleo coming up there. Now, we, for example, in the career search for our employer clients, we pull jobs out from a lot of Taleo stuff, and we represent it on their career site. So you've actually got duplicates potentially across ATX, across career sites, job boards, across some agency sites, and then across the aggregator as well. So it's a very sort of broad mix of where these could be going to. The ATS is quite an interesting one for me. Where does that come up? You go in there and you're applying straight into the belly of the beast. If you like, that's the most direct link to the employer, but often it's one of the worst experiences. Quite often. So are they going to rank that higher than the career site? I certainly hope not, but it's sort of an interesting one there. I still want to myself, I think it will be about the experience. I know you're saying in terms of they can't be the definitive things judge, let's say, of what the actual candidate experience is on the platform. But there are some indicators. They use that at the moment for what's the experience of shopping sites to rank one above the other. It's things like bounce rates. It's things like how much engagement. It's things like if they've got Google Analytics on those sites, and it's a bit contentious because not all sites do, but they've got a wealth of information about there. Where are the traffic sites coming from? How many repeat visitors versus new visitors? There's a wealth of things they could be using. And I don't think they're going to throw all that away in terms of stuff they do at the moment very well for page ranking.
You know what? I just had a revelation, because potentially, if they can track click-throughs and stuff like this, I wonder whether Google might eventually get to the point where they could penalize companies for failing to provide decent response. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, you've got just 70%. Yeah, well, why not? I mean, if they're going to say, look, candidate experience is the main thing, right? We've got the candidate side right, because 73% will apply, but this company here has 0 response rate, or their response rate is like within 100 hours. Yeah, just put a little marker on there, crash down their ranking, and that you can gamify better behavior. It's something we tried actually with Workshape very early on when we had the credit system, where we said, okay, you respond in 24 hours, we'll give you a free credit. And then you can spend the credit on more jobs or whatever. But I can totally see Google having that type of mentality where they can reward behavior and literally nudge people to say, look, your ranking gets hurt if you don't behave in this way.
Hung, I'm sorry to interrupt. And sorry to interrupt, Gareth. I have to jump off the call now because I've got another call. But it's been really great talking to you guys, and maybe we can have this conversation in real time, face to face sometime. So,
Jeff,
thanks a lot.
We'll do that. Thank you very much for your contribution, everyone. This is Job Board Doctor. Please read his blog. It's maybe the definitive article on what it is. Jeff, good to see you, man.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So
just jump in. Sorry, just on the last point. The interesting thing, and I think I saw Indeed experiments with this at one point, is they can't really track, very easily what happens afterwards. What's the experience? I do seem to remember a little thing popping up once you went back onto that job in Indeed. Say, I think, did you apply for it? And that was actually on the sort of job results page, if you like, listings. So if you took that sort of a potential extent, you could actually say inline after you've clicked through, you go back into Google for jobs. Under that job listing you just clicked through was sort of like, what was the experience? Did you hear back from them? They could potentially get feedback, if you like, and try and request it.
Yeah, they will. They will absolutely.
I think that's a way bigger part of it than actually tracking through the whole process, because it's going to take ages for them to really be able to track through a lot of ATSs, a lot of systems, lots of different businesses. So I think actually getting feedback from the people themselves, which is what they do with restaurants and whatever as well. You have Google reviews. They could easily use a similar type of functionality for this, and of course favor businesses based on that kind of information and data.
Yeah, which really starts edging into territory of Glassdoor, for example. In terms of that whole employer review, that's what they've made their business around, really.
Okay. So let's move this conversation on just a little bit. I want to talk about practical things that different kind of actors within this ecosystem kind of now need to do. So we've talked about companies that have career sites. Evidently, they need to play ball with Google, and they need to format their jobs in such a manner that it will be searched or crawled by this new super duper machine that they're rolling out. What's the story here for recruitment agents? These are the guys that buy. I think we touched on it earlier, but I wanted to explore this because they're the guys, to a large extent, have driven the job board market, haven't they? Because they're the ones that have always persistently got the demand for jobs. So they're the best customer for anybody who's a vendor for recruitment tech, because they're the guys that always are buying, and they buy in bulk. What's the story for these guys now? René, do you want to give this a shot?
Sure. So I think you guys are based in the UK, and I think especially in that market, but if you look at it more globally, it's the same everywhere, but it just depends a bit on the local market, how bad it is. Most staffing agencies underinvest in job advertising big time. And that's because obviously they typically are not capable of measuring end to end, right? So they don't know if I invest £1, I'm going to get £5 back in the end. So at the moment, they buy these huge amounts of job ads from job boards for super low prices per listing. And that means that their average spend per job might be 10, 20, 30 pounds, euros, or dollars. But in the end, to be able to maximize their fill rate, so to maximize their revenue, actually they should be spending hundreds, right? And I think by Google coming into this market way closer, they are gonna be able to actually pay for performance in other channels than just Indeed, to say bluntly. And that means that they are going to be more educated, and it means that actually the spend staffing agencies are going to do on advertising is going to be way higher than it used to be.
Because they'll be more because they'll be more confident that they're going to get more results as a result of their spend, right?
Yeah, and it's once you start paying for performance, you're going to think about what that performance is actually delivering you in real performance, and that typically ends up in more spend. This is also the Indeed play, right? Indeed is, of course, trying very hard, and of course, Garrett and I are in this business as well to help channels do that in the end, to prove that what they deliver is valuable, and that because of that, their spend should go up. So I think the recruitment advertising market at this moment is only a fraction of it should and could be. And Indeed has already made a huge difference there, but I think Google can definitely make that kind of a difference as well.
Okay, so listen, guys, this is a question for both of you. We've talked about Indeed a lot. I mean, for me, Indeed have been probably the most important independent innovator in the recruitment tech marketplace over the last decade. And I am one of the few people that admire their kind of super aggressive innovation, right? The fact that they're gonna, I wouldn't say steal their jobs, they're gonna aggregate the jobs, but they spotted it, and then they thought they're gonna choke the job board market. Even though I feel for the job board guys, it was admirable how they went about and did it. And then over the last 2-3 years or so, we've seen all kinds of stuff come out. Indeed Prime, we were doing some sort of agency play. We've got them having a searchable database. They've got of course, they're now a direct job board as well these days. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of people thinking Schadenfreude here. And there's going to be a lot of people looking at Indeed saying, right, how do you like it? Now, how Indeed meant to respond to this?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about this just the other day, haven't we? I mean, my thoughts on this, for a start, the thing that they've really built up so far, that they've really built the size business that they are, is very much all on the back of Google. It's by stealing all that great content from everybody else and then becoming, by being literally the one place to go for all jobs, they then got very engaged with candidate base, and lo and behold, they dominate the top of all Google search results. You can assume, I think fairly, that they're going to lose that huge amount of traffic. So it's a case of, well, how do they engage with their target audience, with the world's candidates? Other than that, I see probably about, I think up into 5 different things. So I'll try and briefly come up with
5 things. I was thinking about. You're going to have to bullet point these, Gareth.
So 5 different bullet points quickly. Heavy advertising campaign. I mean, they've been doing that of late recently anyway. They need to build up their own brand, not rely on just them being the top link in Google. So they need everybody in the world to know their brand and be, destination of choice.
They can't do it on Google Ads, I assume. I mean, what are they going to do it on?
Well, they probably spend PPC for a start. They will do that to some extent, even though they probably hate every second of it. But also, lots of TV campaigns. It's about building the brand of their
brand building. Point 2. What is point 2?
Point two, audience engagement. So at the moment, they've got a massive database. They probably have, well, they do have job alerts, but they'll be looking at other ways to actually just directly engage, sending out regular email campaigns that are going to be of value.
How many people in the database? Because that's one thing Google don't have. They don't actually have a lot of job data or human capital information, using Glenn Caffey's term. They've got search data. They know what I look for. They don't know what the hell I can do. But Indeed have got CVs, basically, don't they? So how big is the CV database?
I don't know the size of it, but you've got to say it's got to be huge, quite simply. That's by turning more into job board, slowly but surely, and now allowing people to actually upload CVs and apply via Indeed, they built up a vast, massive candidate database there, and then they sort of brought their CV profile search kind of thing capability as well. Can we get more job board? So it's huge, and the thing of actually then massively increasing their proactive matching, sending out stuff. By doing it carefully, though, so not to actually just spam the hell out of their audience and just turn them away. They've got to be very careful about that. I think that's going to have to be a key point there. Bring people back so they're not just relying on new people going via Google. Anyway, point three. It might be a bit of an arms race. I think they're going to have to try and focus on new, valuable search-related functionality to just make the search experience ever better. That will probably be an arms race with Google, I suspect. Google's talking about adding commute time search. They don't have that currently, that I'm aware of. So just that whole experience there it would just need to be better and better. And I do see that's being a bit of an arms race to become it. Then, in terms of the ranking side of it, going back to that bit, I think they need to probably start thinking about ranking for non-job related terms, because at the moment, Google for Jobs is only about job-related terms. So if there are other things, around company review pages, Google will probably go down that line more anyway eventually, but for the moment, company review pages might still rank. Potentially people profiles, but there are other ways to rank other than just individual job stuff. That might be an avenue for them to explore. And then finally, you mentioned before about Google Primes. I think, new business models, away from the pure job advertisement and the pay for traffic kind of thing. To more about those managed services, new innovative ones I can't even think of, but Google Prime is probably the best example. So differentiating away from just being a traffic driver.
Yeah, that's it. I think the traffic days of Indeed are over. So we're looking at a major pivot from them, or at least looking at one of their, if you like, perhaps moonshot type products. Maybe they've got to just invest a bit more in that. Rene, have you got anything to add to Gareth's list of 5? What do Indeed do about Google for Jobs, mate?
Yeah, so I think Gareth is making some brilliant points. So trying to look at it from a different perspective a little bit as well. If you look at the massive sales force and knowledge base Indeed has, you have to realize that for a very long time, even if they don't grow their audience anymore, they're going to be able to monetize what they have right now big time. Like, it's impossible for Google to reel in that kind of budget at the moment, because they don't have the relationships with the employers, they don't have the sales force, etc., etc. So that's a very important thing to realize. Then the second thing to realize is that with that massive amount of money still coming in, they can do a lot of stuff which relates to what Gareth was saying, which I think 2 points are most important. First of all, marketing yourself, and with this kind of skill that they have, advertising actually outside of search engine advertising becomes super interesting. So display, but also TV, street advertising, all this kind of stuff. You see that Zip, for example, in the US is also doing this very successfully, I will say. And the second thing, obviously, as they are part of a staffing company, or an HR company is even a better word, obviously they are going to use all their data at some point, and they're already doing that in a couple of ways to get further down the recruiting funnel. So not just the click, but also the apply, which they are already also selling in some forms, and then placements, referrals, all this kind of stuff. You can see all the big investment that companies are making, that staffing companies are making into the mobile staffing place out there, or that they are building themselves. Indeed has the best data set in the world as an HR or recruiting company to do that kind of stuff with. So I'm sure that for certain jobs, it's not going to be anymore, hey, you pay for a click or for a CV, but they will handle everything. There will be no human in there anymore, and they are able to do the invoicing and the payrolling as well. So I can almost not imagine a future where Indeed doesn't make place in that space, or where a recruit which owns Indeed is using Indeed's data to make those kind of plays.
Yeah, I agree with you. So Indeed, if any Indeed people are watching, we kind of believe in you, you know? We think that, yes, this is probably not a shock to the people who know, but when the big whale in the water jumps in, most companies would probably capsize. But I think Indeed will find a way to succeed with this. I want to end this thing on one more sort of just a final point just occurred to me. But you remember Google Plus? That was again some weird moonshot that Google launched. Obviously failed. It was a big Facebook competitor. Didn't happen. But man, wouldn't Google Plus be awesome right now for Google for Jobs? I mean, had they persisted with it just a little bit longer and forced everyone to still use Google Plus or whatever, they would have so much more data. And Tim Ellis has just mentioned something about behavioral profiles and search behavior. I get that, Tim. He's very, very right. Google have this type of information, but they don't have work data. They may understand, yes, he searches a lot for dinosaurs. He's really into dinosaurs. Great. He doesn't know that I'm also, a heroic entrepreneur. Right? They've got no clue about my skill set there. So I think that is the missing thing, which leads me on to the final closing points, because we've got 50 minutes left. Who can respond to this? Of course, you have to talk about LinkedIn. You have to talk about Facebook. It's very exciting to see the very biggest companies getting involved in this. So again, a question to you guys: what is LinkedIn thinking about this right now? Does it affect it at all, or is it still thinking, you know what, we have the human capital information that no one else has, and we're still going to be sitting pretty? Gareth, what do you think?
I mean, the moves at the moment from Google, these sort of, especially around the sort of Google for Jobs, is very active candidate kind of stuff. It's, LinkedIn has really made its mark on that passive candidates base by pretending that it's really to their audience to be a professional networking site and a place to sort of build those contacts.
Not pretending. They were originally exactly that. They just kind of lost their original
money making scheme on the back of that, which is good. But let's face it, they're a job board, they're a CV search engine, primarily, and that's where the vast majority of their data comes. But the reason they've got that data in the first place is because to their users, a lot of their tool development is around that, building up your professional networking and being able to share content, engage with others sort of around that. It still has great value there. So I think at the moment, for now, they're targeting slightly different audiences with some degree of overlap. I mean, obviously there is an active job search engine, very much so within LinkedIn as well. So they will see that side as a threat. Ultimately, I think for now, though, I mean, obviously that they're appearing very well up with Career Builder, probably taking up most of the top spots in Google for Jobs rankings for now. I think I totally agree with what's been said by various others in the long term. I think to René especially that in the long term, job boards are going to lose out from this. I do still think that they're ultimately targeting those guys early because you go and get a job feed from LinkedIn and from Career Builder, bam, you've got millions of jobs, let's say, straight away, and you become a very valuable place for candidates to come. It's a very easy way of grabbing all the jobs. Otherwise, they're following the same kind of route that Indeed did by playing best friends early on, later on, suddenly become worst enemies. But by that point, damage is done. That's our feeling. That's the play that's going on here.
You know what? That is the platform play, though, isn't it? They help create and incubate an ecosystem, perhaps fractured ecosystem, as Jeff mentioned. But they see the opportunity and they'll go for it. And those guys are toast.
Yeah. So I think that LinkedIn has very much been trying to be the one portal for recruitment. They try and avoid at all costs taking people off their platform. The apply via LinkedIn and stuff, and you stay on the platform as much as they possibly can. Google's going to try and do exactly the same in the long term. I'd be amazed if Google don't add their own apply via Google at some point.
Well, this goes back to the Google Plus thing. I mean, I know Tim here. I'd love to get him on at some point. He's defending Google very well. But the fact of the matter is, Google do not have a lot of information about who you are. At least not information relevant to an employer.
No, it's coming. I'm convinced of that.
It will happen. But I'm still, let's say I get a click, I'm still going to say, send me your damn CV. And that is something that LinkedIn don't need to do. One-click apply, see my profile. Even Indeed have the Indeed apply. I think that was one of their recent innovations. So, okay, I do Google apply. I'm going to and to be honest, there's a privacy issue here. So I'm gonna apply with basically my search history. Maybe I don't want to do that. So
they wouldn't give them access to the whole search history.
Well, someone has that information. I can see people's addresses. Anyway, let's answer the Facebook question, Renee. What are Facebook thinking right now? Are they thinking with Facebook, 2 billion people on our, they hit 2 billion users monthly, I think, daily actives, I think. That's ridiculous. Are they saying, such whatever?
Yeah, so I still don't think that Facebook has really made a move into the job space as much as, for example, Indeed and LinkedIn have done, and now, for example, Google is trying to do. And I'm especially saying trying because obviously Google does stuff and fails sometimes, which you can find the lists online very easily of all the things they have tried that didn't work out. To be honest, at the moment, they still have one real big hit, which is Google AdWords, right? The rest is still, kind of nice, but in comparison, that's their success, which is why I believe that if they create a proper advertising machine around Google Jobs, they can be successful. So if you are Facebook, they are just launching these kind of features because once their customers, their B2B customers, so to say, are posting content into these features, which can be restaurants, it can be jobs, it can be anything, it is way easier to get these businesses to start an advertising campaign, right? Because once your content is out there, Facebook is constantly trying to say to you, and you notice if you have a few business pages on Facebook like I do, once you put content out there, they constantly remind you, hey, do you now want to sponsor this content, right? Because right now, the value of putting a job in your job tab as an employer on Facebook is close to zero. There's no point unless you follow what Facebook is telling you to do next, which is to create an ad campaign. So I think there are just some guys at Facebook thinking, hey, what kind of content do a lot of businesses have, and they need a response for it, and they're willing to pay for it. Well, jobs obviously is one of them, but I don't think Facebook is looking at this as a very big market or something. So, and also if you look at the ability you have, if you're not using Facebook's jobs functionality to target people in Facebook with jobs, we all know that the performance of those ads versus, let's say, LinkedIn, Google, Indeed, and some others is way worse. So I don't think Facebook is even really thinking about this or worried or happy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're both right on that. Well, listen, guys, I think that's been a fascinating conversation. I mean, I've come at this as certainly someone who needed to learn a huge amount, and I felt I've done that. So thank you. It's a topic I think is going to be evolving. Everyone's going to keep an eye on it. Already behaviors starting to change. So this is an exciting time, I think, to be involved in some sort of recruitment tech. So, Gareth, thank you very much for joining us today, Gareth. Hopefully we'll have you on the show. I've got 2 more of these before I get kicked off. But it's possible I might continue doing it, in which case we'll maybe do more panels or do more call-ins, that kind of thing. So thank you very much, Gareth, for your contribution. Renee, apologies for your technical difficulties, although I suspect in the end it was probably your fault. That is okay, but you're welcome to come back anytime with your insight. So I think that's about it. So thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed it. Hope you have as well. Please make any more comments to this chat if you're watching. I believe there'll be a recording of all of this. So once that's produced, I'll disseminate it to everyone who's registered. We can chew over it a bit more, and we can see where we go. So anyway, this is it. I'm Hung Lee, your host from Workshop.io. I will love you and leave you.
Bye, Hung. Thank you.
Okay.